Welcome to the end of our journey. This is 6.6, Conditions of Special Quadrilaterals. I am here with you again to go over the rest of this lesson. So, in the end of this lesson, you, the students, will be able to identify the different types of quadrilaterals based on the side and angle relationships, use the properties of specific quadrilaterals to find the missing side and angle values, and understand the relationships between the different sets of quadrilaterals. So, seems like a lot to go over, but it really isn't that bad. Ready? Here we go. Start with your do now, 6.6. What I would like you guys to do is draw and label the following. So what you're going to do is don't worry about diagonals, put the congruent sides, congruent angles, and the parallel sides on these figures. Go. Sorry, had an itch. Parallelogram should look something like that, right? Yeah. All right. Opposite sides are parallel. Opposite sides are congruent, dash, dash, double dash, double dash. Opposite angles are also congruent. So that's what you should have drawn for that figure, okay? Problem 2 is a rhombus. Rhombus is like a parallelogram. The only difference is still the opposite sides parallel. All right, you should also have all the sides are equal. They're all congruent. And the opposite angles are still congruent. So same exact thing as a parallelogram, the only thing is all the sides are equal. Square, like this, right? All the opposite sides. Once again, parallelograms, all of these have the opposite sides parallel. Square, like a rhombus, all the sides are congruent. Unlike a rhombus though, even though the opposite sides are congruent, they are all 90 degrees, they're all right angles. All right, and then you got your rectangle right here. Opposite sides parallel, what a surprise. Opposite sides are congruent, so the same here. Now the only difference is it uses your square. Now you're going to pop in some right angles. Got it? So that is how you draw the 4 main types of parallelograms. Actually 3 main types of parallelograms and the base one. So which of these statements is true? Second part of the do now. Is a rectangle always a square? That's a rectangle. No. All sides of a rectangle do not have to be equal, so a rectangle is not always a square. Is a square a rhombus? Is that a rhombus? Yes, it is. It's just a rhombus, and instead of opposite sides being equal, which they are, it's just all the sides are equal. Is a parallelogram a rhombus? There's a parallelogram. Is that a rhombus? No. Because in a parallelogram, all the sides don't have to be equal. In a rhombus, they do. Is a square a rectangle? There's that. Same as that. It is indeed a rectangle. Do you know why? Because opposite sides are congruent. They just all happen to be the same. So a square is a rectangle, a square is a rhombus, but a rhombus isn't necessarily a square, or a rectangle isn't necessarily a square. Got it? And a rectangle and rhombus definitely aren't each other. Bam, so it can't be all together. Right, let's go. Example 1, identify the quadrilaterals. Quadrilateral ABCD has both pairs of opposite sides congruent. What type of quadrilaterals meet this condition? And then draw. So what type of parallelograms have opposite sides that are congruent? So you have a parallelogram. Opposite sides are congruent. You have a rectangle. Opposite sides are congruent. Right? You also have rhombus, opposite sides are congruent there, and a square where opposite sides are congruent. So, just because all the sides are congruent, it still means that opposite sides are congruent as well. Example number 2. Identify what type of quadrilateral that is. So write down your answer really quickly. Alright, what you should do. Fact 1. All the sides of this figure are congruent. So that means it could be one of 2 things. It could be a square or it could be a rhombus. Now, let's look at the next fact. What do you notice here? Angles are not 90 degrees, so it can't be a square, so it has to be a rhombus. Got it? Awesome. Let's look at problems 3, 4, 5, and 6. Complete these problems and we'll go over. Problem 3. Has both pairs of opposite sides congruent? What meets this condition? Both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So, both pairs of angles are congruent. What could that be? be a parallelogram. And since it could be a parallelogram, everything that falls under parallelogram. It could be a rhombus, it could be a rectangle, it could be a square. Got it? Because if they're all 90, it's a rectangle or square. And 90 is congruent to 9. What type of quadrilaterals have two pairs of adjacent sides that are always congruent? So two pairs of adjacent, meaning the sides are next to each other, that are always congruent. That's only one type. What do you think? Did you say a kite? If you did, you're correct. Adjacent, next to each other, congruent. What types of quadrilaterals have opposite sides that are not congruent? So now the opposite sides are not congruent. There's two. Oh, what a square. Oh, duh, I didn't even think about that. You can also have a square. Two pairs of adjacent sides that are always congruent. Or you can have a rhombus. Two pairs of adjacent sides that are always congruent. Ah, got me. I didn't think deep enough. Anyway, problem 5. Opposite sides not congruent. Kite, right? Opposite sides not congruent. Can't be a rhombus, can't be a square. Rhombus, square. Can't be any type of parallelogram, but it could be one more thing, and that one more thing is a trapezoid. Alright? What type of quadrilaterals can have exactly 3 sides that are congruent? So it can't be 4 sides, it can only be 3 sides that are congruent. There's only one. Wait a second here, mister. No, I guess there's none. Actually, it could be one. You could have an isosceles trapezoid. I'm going to change that. I would think none, but you can have an isosceles trapezoid that has the opposite sides congruent and then the top congruent to them. I'm going to change my answer. All right, number 7. What are the specific names of the two quadrilaterals below? Rectangle, right? No, not a rectangle. Do you see 90-degree angles there? No. So it has to be a parallelogram. With no 90 degrees, it cannot be a rectangle. Oh, all 4 angles are 90, so it has to be a square, right? Does it? Oh, no right angles. It's not a square, it's actually a rectangle. Because these are right angles, it means these sides are parallel, okay, and these sides are parallel. And these 2 sides are equal, and these 2 sides are equal. But there's no congruent mark, so we don't know that all 4 sides are equal. We just know the opposite sides are equal, so we can only call it a rectangle, and we can't go into square, even though it looks like a square. It could just be off one side, it could be off by like 0.1 of a millimeter, and it wouldn't be a square. Show that the figure is a rhombus. In order for a rhombus, opposite sides have to be congruent. So x has to be congruent to the opposite side, which is 61. Y has to be congruent to the opposite angle, which is 119. Show that the figure is a kite. So, in a kite, you have one pair of opposite angles, you have 2 pairs of congruent sides, and the other angles on the inside, since it's a quadrilateral, all add up to 360. So, which ones are the 2 congruent angles? Just look. A equals 110. In order to find B, 110, 110, 86, plus B equals 360. 210 plus 86 is 306, plus B equals 360. Subtract that, and B equals 54. D and C are side lengths because they're on the outside. Now, its opposite sides are not congruent. The sides that are adjacent are congruent. So, 15 and D and 7 and C. So, you got 7 and you got 15. Any question number 9? Nope. Awesome. Number 10. 11. Go. What's the most specific name for this quadrilateral? Adjacent sides are equal, so there's only one answer you could have, and that answer is A. You got adjacent sides congruent. It is a kite. Is there enough information in this diagram to show that it is a rectangle? Well, we're only given 1, 2, 3 right angles, so the answer is no, right? Not necessarily. The answer is yes. Why is it yes and not no? How many degrees are inside a quadrilateral? 360, right? So that means 1, 2, 3, and whatever this is has to be 360. We know that these 3 guys are 90, right? So 270 subtracted from 360 means D has to be 90 as well. So it does have 4 right angles, therefore it is a rectangle. See? You can use deductive reasoning to solve these problems. All right, true or false? 12 through 17, go. All right, is a rectangle always a square? We discussed this at the beginning of the lesson. No, it is not. That is false. All right, a square is always a rectangle. Is a square always a rectangle? Of course it is, because I just told you right there. All right, opposite sides are congruent of a square, right? So therefore, even though they're all congruent, that makes it a rectangle. Is a kite always a parallelogram? Parallelograms, opposite sides, parallel, congruent. No. And it has 4 right angles. False, because opposite sides are not parallel in a kite. Is an isosceles trapezoid always a quadrilateral? Does it always have 4 sides? Of course it does. Duh. Is a square always a rhombus? True. Now the reason it's true is a square has 4 congruent sides. So that means the opposite sides are congruent and all 4 are congruent to each other just like a rhombus is. I mean the opposite sides are parallel. Okay? Opposite angles are congruent as well. They just all happen to be congruent to each other. Parallelogram is sometimes a rhombus is true. The key word here is sometimes. It's not always a rhombus, but sometimes a parallelogram happens to be a rhombus. Okay? So you got to look at the words. Always, sometimes. Okay? Trick. Think. All right? Read. Read, read, read. All right? Let's do 6 more. All right? Give you 10 seconds. Or you can just pause them. Okay? So a parallelogram is always a rectangle. Is it always a rectangle? No, there's many different types of parallelogram. Rectangle, rhombus, square. So it may not have right angles. A parallelogram can be just a parallelogram, or it could just be a rhombus. So it's sometimes a rectangle. A kite is sometimes a trapezoid. No. Because adjacent sides are equal and trapezoids have one pair, the bases of a trapezoid are parallel. So if it has no parallel sides, like a kite, can never be a trapezoid. A rhombus is always a rectangle. Now, a rectangle always has 4 right angles. Does a rhombus always have 4 right angles? No. So the answer is false. Right? And a rectangle doesn't have to have all the sides being equal. It's a double no. Quadrilateral could be a square, a rectangle, rhombus at the same time. So could it be all 3 of those at the same time? The answer is true, because if the answer is a square, that means it's also a rectangle and rhombus. So a square is both a rectangle and rhombus together. A rhombus is always a square. That's not true. Rhombus is sometimes a square, okay? Because a rhombus doesn't have to have the right angles. All right, read the words. Parallelogram is sometimes a kite. Not true either, because kites don't have parallel sides. All right, seems pretty simple, right? All right, so let's fill in this chart real quick. See if you can fill it in with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shapes that are quadrilateral. So first one, pull something out of my bag here. All right, pull out parallelograms. What do you think parallelograms go? I'm going to pop you over there, parallelogram. We're going to put you right there because they start to branch out. Now, what do they branch out into? I don't know yet. So let's see square. So the square of parallelogram, is it something more than a parallelogram? Is it its own thing? What do you think? Well, you take square, throw square down there. All right? Now, what's another type of square, parallelogram? Come on, rectangle. Throw a rectangle over there. All right? Rhombus. Throw, uh-oh. Do you notice anything messed up? There's one mistake on the slide. I put it on purpose to see if you guys can get it at the end. I'm not going to tell you that. All right, let's pull out another one. Trapezoid. Trapezoid pops down there. All right, one type of trapezoid is a isosceles trapezoid. And what's the other one? All by itself is it's a kite. So fly that kite over there. So the key to this one is with 7 shapes. 2 of these shapes are mixed up. Can anyone guess what they are? All right, they put like a little mess up in here to make sure you guys can figure it out. It's kite. No, it's rhombus and kite and square actually. A square is a rectangle and rhombus, and a rhombus and a rectangle are not the same. All right, so these 2 should be switched. If you understood that and you got that, and we're going crazy about it, I meant to do that. Okay, so here we go. Just to make sure to keep you on your toes, so you don't just copy everything down and just take everything as gospel. Now, quadrilateral ABCD only has one pair of opposite parallel sides. What are the quadrilaterals that meet this condition? So, you have two possibilities. One pair of opposite sides. So, trapezoids. And what's the other one? Isosceles trapezoid. Ah, tricky. They're both trapezoids, okay? Kites have no pairs. Parallelogram has two pairs. What is the most specific name of the quadrilateral below? What is the most specific name of this quadrilateral? So there's one pair of parallel sides and one pair of opposite congruent sides. 24 should be your hint. Your answer should be rectangle. Do you see right angles? No. What about parallelogram? Nope, only one pair of parallel sides. So what could it be? It's actually an isosceles trapezoid. Top and bottom are what? Parallel, and these two sides are congruent. All right, 26. Show that PQRS is a parallelogram. What would it be a parallelogram? Opposite sides congruent, opposite angles congruent. So, A and C are equal. A plus 55 are supplementary, linear pair. A plus 55 equals 180. A is 125. 180 minus 55. B, congruent, is 55. C is congruent to A, is 125. Now we need to find X and Y. X is congruent to the side across from it, it's 43. Y is congruent to the side across from it, that is 15. All right. 27. Is a parallelogram always a rectangle? The answer is no. It's not always a rectangle. Parallelogram is only a rectangle sometimes. Sometimes it's a rhombus. Sometimes it's a, well, if it's a square, it's also a rectangle. So sometimes it's a rhombus. Sometimes it's just a parallelogram. All right. Parallelogram does not always have right angles. All right. A rectangle, though, always a parallelogram. All right. Now, last thing we're going to do here is fill in this Venn diagram with the following shapes. So, do it real quick, and then I will see if you are correct. All right, let's go. Quadrilateral. That's everything. Venn diagram means if you're in part of the Venn diagram, you're part of that. So, next part is a parallelogram. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral. Now, parallelogram consists of rhombuses and rectangles, and if something is both a rhombus and a rectangle, it is also a square. So all three of these are types of parallelograms, and all four of these are types of quadrilaterals. What do you think these two things are? Well, we got a trapezoid, and a specific type of trapezoid is a isosceles trapezoid. And the last one, the guy all by himself, the lonely one, is your kite. All right, so if you got all this stuff correct, awesome, this was a pretty easy one. Next thing we're going to do is the review, and after going over the review, obviously have your chapter 6 test, which is a pretty easy test. All right, so if you have any questions with this, make sure you email me, make sure you contact me, make sure you just ask me, okay, and I can help you, walk you through it, or find ways to help you understand. All right, so until then, here's your answers, and have a good day.